Hello everybody and welcome to another A+ 1101 practice quiz where I'm going to take you through a question from every single exam objective for the A+ 1101 examination. I'm going to give you a detailed explanation as to why the correct answer is the correct answer, and essentially I'm going to help you prepare for your exam and make sure that you're one step closer to passing it on your first try. And if it's not your first try, then perhaps your second try. Let's go ahead and get straight into it. The first question reads, Chase has been tasked with creating an educational document relating to the common uses of different kinds of technology. He has been effortlessly making his way through the document, but upon making it to the section of NFC, he gets stuck. He approaches you for help with this section of the document. Which of the following do you tell him is a common use of NFC technology? A. Authentication. B. Quick cash-in-hand payments. C. GPS services. Or D. In-store QR code check-ins. Go ahead and take your time to think about that one. Pause the video if you need to pause the video. I'm going to go ahead and jump straight to the answer in 3, 2, 1. Now, the answer is A, authentication. Now, NFC is commonly used to authenticate. It's able to be put in smart cards or any other device that you can essentially hold up to a reader and easily and quickly and effortlessly authenticate and tell that reader that you are in fact who you are meant to be. It can be implemented with multi-factor authentication as well. You could require a PIN code and then also to bump your NFC tag at the same time, or it could simply be used as a standalone method of authentication. So essentially, NFC can be used for a couple of purposes. The first one is quick contactless payment. You walk into the service station or any other kind of shop and you simply hold your phone or your card up to the reader and you've paid for your item. It's quick, it's easy, it's done, right? Really quick data transfer by holding your device just a couple of centimeters on the reader itself in order to transfer that payment or that data. The second use is data sharing. So you can actually use that same technology to quickly and easily share data with someone else. You could kind of just bump your phones together and quickly share data. And the third one is security and access control. And that's what we were talking about in this particular question. You can use NFC for authentication as well. Now, you might be thinking, hold on a second, Matt, one of those options in that question said it was used for quick payments. Why was that wrong? Well, as usual, the devil is in the detail. If we go back and have a look at that question, we can see that the option there actually specifically says quick cash-in-hand payments. Now, NFC doesn't use cash. You're not exchanging cash from one hand to another hand. It's a quick contactless payment. So this was essentially a test to see if you're actually reading the question right. NFC doesn't involve cash. It's a quick contactless payment. So by definition, B is not correct. Yes, it involves a payment, but it absolutely does not involve cash in hand payment. So option B there is not correct due to the words cash in hand being used. It's a completely different thing. It is not describing NFC. That's just encouraging you to actually pause, make sure you're reading the question correctly before you get excited and click the first answer that you recognize something from. So when you're taking the exam, make sure you're reading the questions properly. The option C, GPS services, NFC, is not related to GPS services. Again, quick data transfers. For GPS, you're looking at a combination of satellite and cellular network information. So having a look at what satellites you're connected to and then further triangulating based on what cell towers you're connected to as well. And finally, option D, in-store QR code check-ins. QR code check-ins generally involve scanning a QR code with your camera. It's not actually a direct data transfer. It's simply using your camera to scan the QR code, which will take you to some sort of link and allow you to do X, Y, or Z, whatever that may be. Now, again, that does not involve a quick data transfer, so that is not the correct answer. Now, this question came from two exam objective. Of course, exam objective 1, more specifically 1.3, which reads, given a scenario, set up and configure accessories and ports of mobile devices. And one of those is near-field communication. And the second exam objective is actually exam objective 2.5, which reads, compare and contrast protocols for wireless networking. And you can see we have NFC here. So for these two exam objectives, for the first one, you're going to need to understand how to set up, how to configure each of these. So how do you set up or configure USB-C, micro USB, Lightning serial interfaces? I'm going to just kind of stop and be honest with you here. Really, for this, what you're actually going to need to know for the most part is you're just going to be able to understand when is the best time to use each of these. So you may be presented with a scenario, and that scenario may say, Bob is trying to find a method to quickly use contactless payments as he goes to the service station to pay for his petrol. Which of the following options is best suited for him to do that? And of course, then it would be near field communication would likely be an option. It would likely be the correct answer there. So I wouldn't worry too much about in detail trying to actually understand how to set this up if you're trying to study for your exam in a short amount of time. I'd more worry about just understanding what each of these are and when you should use them, when they're an appropriate solution. All right. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and head into question number 2 for this practice quiz. Question 2 from exam objective 2 reads, a network administrator is faced with a situation where power over Ethernet is needed for certain devices, but the existing switch does not support PoE. They seek advice on how to address this issue without replacing the current switch. Which of the following options provides the appropriate solution for enabling PoE in such a scenario? A. Using a network interface card to enable PoE on the devices. B. Utilize an optical network terminal to provide PoE capabilities. C. Connect the devices to a hub to enable PoE functionality. D. Implement PoE injectors between the switch and the devices. Or E. Replace the existing switch with a PoE-enabled switch. Go ahead and pause the video if you need some time to answer that question. We're going to go ahead and get straight into the answer in 3, 2, 1. Now, the answer is D. Implement PoE injectors. So if you have a switch that does not have power over Ethernet capabilities, but you have a device that needs to be powered through an Ethernet cable, you can actually take the switch, run the Ethernet cable into a separate component called an injector, which will inject power into that Ethernet cable, and then run the Ethernet cable coming out the other side and going into your device. So that will effectively be providing power over Ethernet. Okay, so that would be the solution. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the other answers here. A. Use a network interface card to enable PoE on the devices. A network interface card, or a NIC, is simply a card that allows you to integrate with networks. All right, so that's something that the functionality a network interface card will give you is it will give you the functionality of being able to use a network. More specifically, a NIC on its own will give you access to a wired network, and you'll also need a wireless network interface card in order to access wireless networks too. All right. And option B, utilize an optical network terminal. That is one that when you're using an optical, when you're using a fiber network connection, you'll have the fiber coming in. It will plug into the optical network terminal. And what that optical network terminal does is it essentially transfers that from being a fiber connection and into a connection that you can actually access on the inside of your home. So the fiber comes in and plugs into the terminal, right? And it translates between your internet service provider, which is the fiber itself, and then it translates that into a copper network, which you can actually use on the inside of your home. So it's translating between the two. So if you're using fiber network, you're probably going to have an optical network terminal. That's what that is used for. The next one was C, connect the devices to a hub. As we can see here, the hub, we should be familiar with what that is. It's an older device that broadcasts every piece of data to every other device that's on that hub. So it's a very old technology, not very new. Basically, you're going to want to, at all costs, move away from a hub because it's just broadcasting everything all the time, sending a lot of unnecessary data over the network, and it's going to cause traffic. It's going to slow you down. It's not going to be good. A hub not only doesn't provide any additional functionality of any kind, but it just provides only negatives, so you really don't want to use a hub for anything. And finally, we had the final option, which was replace the existing switch with a power over Ethernet enabled switch. That absolutely is an option that could work, but we have to pay attention to what the question is specifically asking us. The question specifically says, how can he address this issue without replacing the current switch? So that automatically eliminates that final option. So again, that's just a matter of reading the question correctly. Okay. let's go ahead and have a look at what exam objective that is from. That was from 2.2, compare and contrast common networking hardware. And again, power over Ethernet, you need to know about the injectors, you need to know about the switch, what a switch is, what does it mean if a switch has power over Ethernet capabilities and power over Ethernet standards. You'll need to know the differences between those. So you'll want to have a document of some kind that tells you about the injectors, the switch, and also the differences between these standards. And thankfully, you can find that document over at journeytocyber.com at the A+ 1101 Learning Guide. It will give you not only notes, but also some practice questions and learning activities that you can use to study for that. But hey, I promise I won't plug myself anymore. I probably definitely will, but we'll ignore that for now. Go ahead and move on to the next question. Exam objective 3.
This video is interrupted by our sponsor, and that sponsor is me. Did you know I have a learning guide that breaks down the A+ examination by not only exam objective, but by each dot point within that exam objective. And for each dot point within each exam objective, I have comprehensive notes, active recall questions, simple questions with simple answers as well, and learning activities for those areas that I think you really need it in. So if you need some A+ 1101 resources, you're looking for some resources, I'm your guy. Head over to journeytocyber.com and grab some. All right, thanks guys. Back to the video.
The question reads, you are assembling a desktop computer system and need to select the appropriate connection interfaces for various components. Which interface type is used to connect internal storage devices such as hard drives and solid-state drives in a computer system? A. Peripheral Component Interconnect. B. PCI Express. C. SATA. Or D. M2. As usual, go ahead and pause the video if you feel like you need some time to answer this question. I'm going to go ahead and jump to the answer right about now. The answer is C, SATA. Now, in order to answer this correctly, of course, you are going to need to know and understand the difference between these different connections, between these different interfaces. So, SATA, in short, is used to connect internal hard drives. So, if you're looking at a question that is asking you how do you connect an internal hard drive, the answer is going to be SATA. If it's asking you how to connect an external hard drive, the answer is going to be eSATA, E standing for external there. So SATA for inside, eSATA for outside. But the difficulty is it gets a little bit more complex when you think about solid state drives because there are different interfaces you can potentially use. So if we come back and have a look at this question, the first one, peripheral component interconnect, that's where you're using an older interface. It's very old, it's very slow, it's not really used widely anymore due to its lack of speed and due to PCIe being a faster, just better in every way it possibly can be option. But PCI is an older interface used to connect peripherals, essentially. So any peripherals that you want to connect, you use a PCI slot. It's an older one, it's slower, it's simply not as good. It looks something like what you can see at the bottom there. However, PCI or PCI Express is a newer, faster interface used to connect peripherals. So again, today, if you're connecting any relatively modern peripheral to any relatively modern motherboard, you'll be using PCIe for the most part. Now, M2 is a form factor for connecting SSDs. You can get M2 SSDs, which slide into a slot that looks like that, and the M2 SSD looks like that. So that could be correct if the question didn't actually specify that it was also talking about hard drives. There is no M2 hard drive interface or form factor. Hard drives don't come in that form factor. So if it was only saying SSDs, absolutely, you could have said M2, but because it includes hard drives, we know it can't be that. We know hard drives are either SATA or eSATA, so therefore SATA was the correct option there. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next question from exam objective 4. The question reads, you have been tasked with configuring a cloud solution that allows a group of restaurants in the same city to combine funds in order to purchase and share everything required for their own cloud setup. What kind of cloud configuration is this? A. Community cloud. B. Private cloud. C. Public cloud. Or D. Hybrid cloud. Go ahead and pause the video. If you need some more time to answer that, we are going to go ahead and get straight into the answer in 3, 2, 1. Now, the answer is community cloud. So this essentially comes down to understanding, of course, the difference between these different kind of clouds. When would you use one? What does it mean to have a community cloud, a private cloud, a public cloud, or a hybrid cloud? What's the difference between them, right? So in this case, we're talking about a community cloud because we have a variety of different shareholders or stakeholders who want to come together, combine their funds in order to invest in creating a cloud that they will essentially share. So in that sense, they're creating a little cloud community, and they're all coming together to fund something that they would not be able to do on their own, right? So you're going to want to have an understanding of the following. Community cloud, when multiple different stakeholders or shareholders or individuals or companies, whatever term you want to use, come together to fund that infrastructure and pay for that infrastructure, and then they share that infrastructure amongst one another. Usually they're doing that because they want to share the costs of that, and usually they're going to be part of a related field. So a group of banks, a group of restaurants, a group of X, Y, or Z. Alternatively, you have a private cloud. That's where the company pays for its own hardware. It pays for everything. They don't want to outsource. They don't want to hire space on someone else's. They don't want to share any data with anyone. They pay for the infrastructure. They pay to store it. They pay to run it. They are the only ones that use it. They want everything. Maximum security, but it's very, very pricey. Public cloud. That's generally where you're renting space on someone else's cloud. You don't own the hardware at all. You're being given the space. So think about Google Drive, right? When we use Google Drive, we're paying to use a public cloud. We're just paying to use it's free, right? Unless you do the paid version. You're using available space, rented space, essentially on someone else's hardware. You don't pay for the hardware. You don't worry about the hardware. You just have a little bit of space on that hardware, right? That is a public cloud. And then you have a hybrid cloud, which is essentially a combination of two or more of any of these cloud infrastructure. So you might have, you know what? We have some private data. We want to have half of it, the really important stuff, on our private cloud, but then the rest we can do a community cloud, right? That would be a hybrid cloud, for example. A combination of any two or more others. So if you're looking at it and it looks like there's bits and pieces from a bunch of them, it's probably a hybrid cloud. That comes from exam objective 4.1, which says we need to be able to summarize cloud computing concepts. So just summarize, simply describe what is it, what does it mean? So again, you can see highlighted exactly the topics that we just covered there. You're going to want to be able to talk about and summarize, verbally talk about what each of these things are within this exam objective confidently so that someone else can understand what you're saying. Okay, that being said, we're going to go ahead and move on to our final question from this 1101 practice quiz. Let's do it. The question reads, you've noticed lines running down your printed pages when using your inkjet printer. What could be causing this issue? A, the paper size is incorrect. B, the photosensitive drum has scratches. C, the print heads are dirty. Or D, the fuser assembly needs replacement. As usual, go ahead and pause this video if you need more time to answer the question, but we're going to go ahead and jump straight into it with your answer right about now. The answer is C, the print heads are dirty. So the first thing to note is the question specified what kind of printer it was. Okay, so it's an inkjet printer. That should immediately allow us to start eliminating potential options. They're probably going to throw in options that are from a laser printer, for example, and they're going to want to see if you can even differentiate between the components of an inkjet versus a laser printer. And I've done just that in this question. So first of all, the paper size is incorrect. Incorrect paper size will result in a multitude of issues. So it could result in issues such as you might have misalignment, or you might have paper jams. It might be getting stuck if you're trying to feed the wrong paper size through there, right? But it's not going to generally result in lines. If you get a question about lines down the page in your exam, do not say paper size. That could be if it's getting stuck, if there's a paper jam, if it's coming out on the wrong size, which is pretty intuitive, right? It's going to be due to paper size. The next option was the photosensitive drum has scratches. Now, immediately, if we know the difference between our components of different kinds of printers, we should know that this is going to be wrong, because the photosensitive drum isn't even in an inkjet printer. The photosensitive drum is, in fact, in a laser printer. That is the drum that essentially transfers the product onto the paper before it is fused. So the trick here is in a laser printer, a photosensitive drum having a scratch does result in a line down the page. So you might look at this, and if you don't know the difference between your printer components, you might say that's the right answer. But it's not, because an inkjet printer doesn't have a photosensitive drum. Only a laser printer has a photosensitive drum. And the final answer, the fuser assembly needs replacement. Again, the fuser assembly is only in a laser printer, and that's what is responsible for after the drum has transferred the components. The fuser assembly fuses it to the paper and actually makes it stick. So if the fuser assembly needs replacement, it generally means it's not working, which means the toner will come out on that paper, but it just won't be fused to the paper, so it'll be all smudgy. So if you have smudgy paper, it's probably that the fuser assembly needs replacement in a laser printer. But this was an inkjet printer, so we had lines down the printed page, which means the print heads were probably dirty or clogged, right? They're trying to print, but they're clogged, so they're kind of moving around and just drawing really drawing lines all over the page, which is not something that we want to have happen. So this comes from exam objective 5.6, which says, given a scenario, troubleshoot and resolve printer issues. So this is probably one of the most hated exam objectives, I think. When I was studying for this, I remember thinking, why are there so many questions about printers, right? All the practice exams I did, and the real one as well, hypothetically, it could be that you might get a lot of printer questions there too. So just be ready for that. You'll essentially need to know what might cause all of these different issues in every different kind of printer as well, which is a bit of a pain in the butt, but you need to do it. It also comes from exam objective 3.7, which says, given a scenario, install and replace printer consumables. So when you think about this, the key to this question was knowing what components belong to what type of printer. That would have helped you conduct the process of elimination if you were struggling with immediately knowing the right answer. So if you knew that a laser printer had the imaging drum and fuser assembly, but an inkjet didn't, you would have pretty much by default gotten that question right, because you could go through the process of elimination. So make sure you understand what printers have what different components. That would be my main takeaway. Now, if you found this video useful, if you think that, you might like some resources that are similar to that of this video, because they will help you pass your A+ 1101 exam in an effective manner without going on tangents and without talking about things that are outside the scope of the exam objectives, and they'll give you comprehensive notes and practice questions and learning activities and practice exams, and performance-based questions, you're in the right place, because you can head over to journeytocyber.com and grab all of what I just described. I have, as I say, right here, the only products you'll need to pass your A+ exam. I have a learning guide, which has notes, learning activities, some active recall questions, and questions with answers within the learning guide for not only every exam objective, but every dot point within every exam objective, and every sub dot point within that exam, within that dot point within that exam objective. So you know exactly what you're covering and exactly what area of that the exam that you're looking at the moment, which is really helpful for identifying your weak areas and where you're not confident. I also have my practice exams. There's 5 practice exams there, right? And you can get a simulated exam experience with questions that accurately reflect that of the exam, with performance-based questions in there as well. And if you want even more performance-based questions, I also have my PBQ simulations, which is actually has clickable buttons. It's cool. You can click on it and do actual little PBQs. So look, if you want to grab all of those, you can head over to journeytocyber.com. Maybe you just want one. My most popular is a learning guide, but of course, to get the best chance, I recommend the Ultimate Success Bundle, which is all of them put together with a little bit of a discount there, because it's cheaper than you would be getting it if you got all 3 separately. So with that being said, I will see you in the next video, and good luck with your exam.